Chapter 80, Galxicus, 3. Start! Boom! As soon as the referee announced the start of the match, like a missile, Alex shot in my direction. A shockwave resounded across the arena as his figure disappeared from where he was standing. Dash! Moments before Alex shot in my direction, tensing my calves, I moved backward and quickly drew a circle in the air. Swoosh! Just as the tip of Alex's spear was about to reach me, motioning with my fingers upwards, the ring I created moved right in front of the spear. Clank! Caught off guard, Alex's arms, which were still holding onto the spear tightly, flung in the air as the spear clashed against the ring, disrupting its momentum. His body became wide open. Capitalizing on the opening, without skipping a beat, using the scabbard of the sword, I hit him in the face, and the sound of something breaking resounded across the arena. Kacha! Kuwawa! Taking 10 steps back, Alex opened his eyes wide open as his hands held onto his nose. Drip! Drip! Soon red droplets fell onto the pavement of the arena. Taking a moment to process what had happened, Alex looked at the ground for a moment before screaming with bloodshot eyes. How dare you! Vuum! Soon, a thick pressure started emanating from his body, surrounding the whole arena. Noticing the changes happening around me, I rubbed my chin and stared at Alex. The red hue surrounding his body had become thicker and stronger than before. He was finally starting to take me seriously. Licking my lips lightly, raising my hand, I provocatively beckoned at him. Come. In the stands, watching the spectacle unfold before their eyes, Ronald and Samantha Dover were pleasantly surprised by their son's performance. Although the match had only just started, from the way things were going, Ren seemed to be having the upper hand. Oh my God, since when did Ren become so strong? Covering her mouth to hide her shock, Samantha looked at her husband, who, although seemed to have had no significant change in expression, was too shocked as his hands shook as soon as Ren hit Alex in the face. He's definitely become stronger. Humph, he just got lucky. Martin, who was a few rows behind them, snorted. However, although he said that, his face was grim. Sitting up on his chair, his eyes remained glued to the arena. Alex must have underestimated his opponent. There's no way such mistake would happen again. He just couldn't believe that Alex, a talent that he had spent countless resources on to convince him to join him, was currently losing Ren. Someone evaluated as a ranked talent couldn't possibly beat Alex, who was evaluated at rank. It just wasn't possible. And true to his predictions, the fight began to lean in Alex's direction as soon as he released his full power. From then on, Alex was on the attack, whilst Ren was on the defense. Secretly sighing in relief, Martin leaned back on his chair and looked at Ronald. See, what did I tell you? He was just lucky. Clank! 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 Alex's spearmanship was truly domineering and vicious. With each swing, he would directly aim for my heart and head, resulting in me having to switch focus so that I could constantly defend myself from his attacks. Using the spear's long reach, he constantly cut, smacked, and stabbed in my direction. To the spectators, rather than a duel, this was more like Alex viciously attacking me with everything he got. Swoosh! Swoosh! Circling the rings around me, I would constantly move them towards where Alex was attacking, repeatedly blocking his every attack. Clank! Clank! Soon, the sounds of Alex's spear clashing against my rings repeatedly reverberated across the arena. The crowd's booing followed suit. Do something! Fight back! This is so boring. As if everything went from one ear to the other, I kept defending. Although it looked like I was struggling, I really wasn't. Since I decided to hide my main sword art, I decided to use this time to get familiar with my second sword art. Ring of Vindication. And what better way than through real combat? Stop hiding like a rat and fight, you pussy. Annoyed, noticing that things were currently going nowhere, Alex screamed as he fiercely stabbed the spear in my direction. Just do something. Damn it. Clank. Clank. As Alex hacked with more power and with greater speeds, I continuously matched his tempo and redirected the rings around me accordingly. Whenever I noticed that a ring was about to break, I would instantly create a new one. This endless cycle repeated a couple of times before Alex stopped attacking. Phew. Taking a deep breath, Alex stopped whatever he was doing and clenched his teeth hard. What's wrong? Tired already? Seeing Alex distancing himself from me, I immediately taunted. However, this time, he ignored me. Licking his dried lips, Alex's grip on his spear increased. He was trying his best to calm himself down and come up with an appropriate strategy. Calm down, calm down. Let's think things through. This bastard is like a turtle. No matter how much power I put into my attacks, he always blocks them with his strange rings. Especially when he stacks them together. Once he does that, breaking his defenses becomes impossible. Damn it, what should I do? Glancing around the arena for anything that could help him, he soon took a look at the ground and finally noticed something. Holes with the imprints of his saws appeared all over the floor of the arena. Are my attack patterns too predictable? Taking a better look at the surroundings, Alex noticed that whenever he attacked he would leave imprints of his foot on the ground. And the one thing he managed to notice as he looked at the arena was that he had only been attacking from the front. His footprints would only be left whenever he propelled his body forward in a straight line. He had done so to maximize his speed, but he now realized that because of that his attacks had become predictable. With him just charging from the front, his attack range became much more narrow, making it easier for the opponent to defend against. This was a serious flaw. What if he suddenly switched attack patterns and made them harder to predict? As his thoughts reached that far, gripping onto his spear, Alex once again dashed in my direction. This time, his movements were quite complex. Like a crab, he zigzagged as he steadily charged forward. His movements weren't as predictable, as it had no set pattern. A stark contrast to before when he would directly lunge in my direction. It was obvious that he knew that just brute forcing his way through wasn't going to give him the win. Although I was surprised by his sudden actions, it was all futile on his end. It didn't matter if he made it hard for me to predict his movements. I didn't need to predict in the first place. Swoosh. 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 Gesturing with my hands, the rings revolving around me moved and surrounded Alex, restricting his movements. Fuck. With the rings around him, Alex could only helplessly stop trying to move in a zigzag pattern, and charge at me directly. Damn it, fight me already. It's time to release the bait. Noticing Alex becoming increasingly frustrated by my fighting style, I knew it was time to end the match. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In one swift and fast movement, jumbling up the rings together, with 2 rings at the bottom and 1 at the top, I formed a triangle. With a movement of my hand, the triangle started rotating in front of me, creating a large defensive shield. However, if one looked closely, although the shield looked huge and impenetrable, there was a small gap in the middle of it. Small enough for a human to fit in. That was on purpose. The reason I rotated the ring wasn't so that it would create a visual image of a pure shield, no, it was done so that Alex would assume I was covering up the small flaw. Halt. And just like I predicted, halting his steps, Alex stared at the large ring before him. Noticing something, his previous grim expression disappeared and a smirk appeared on his face. It looks like God has not given up on me. Tensing his calves, Alex propelled his body forward. Boom. creating 2 small craters on the ground beneath his feet. The sound of an explosion resounded throughout the arena as Alex disappeared from where he was standing. In an instant, he appeared before the shield. Whilst in the air, stabbing his spear forward, Alex leaned his body forward and smoothly dived into the ring, appearing right before me. Smiling manically, he shouted, "Die!" Watching the tip of the spears nearing my face, I grinned. So predictable. Sidestepping, narrowly avoiding the spear as it grazed my shoulder, I briefly made eye contact with Alex. Smiling, coating my fist with mana, I threw an uppercut towards Alex, who was still in the air. Bomb! Kuwawa! Although he tried to avoid my fist, in the end, because he was moving too fast, it still connected. As my fist hit his stomach, a large shockwave swept the arena and Alex's eyes became dyed in white for a split second. Thud! Dropping on the ground hard, holding onto his stomach, green liquid escaped from Alex's mouth as he constantly gagged. Barf! Barf! KHHH! Arriving in front of Alex, stepping on his face, I looked down on him and smirked. Slowly the white glow around me intensified. Vroom! Soon my ranked pressure enveloped the whole arena, causing Alex, who was on the ground, to open his eyes wide. How? You? Smiling at him, I nodded my head. Yeah, I never considered you an opponent to begin with. Gotcha. Stomping onto his face once, Alex passed out on the ground. Foo. Taking a deep breath, I looked towards my surroundings. Silence. Everything around me was silent. Be it the referee, the audience, Martin, or my parents. No one spoke. Only silence prevailed in the arena. Not paying my mind to it, I once again looked down on Alex. I guess you really were right about us being in completely different worlds. Chapter 81, Galxicus, 4. I am not outstanding. If we exclude the fact that I practiced a 5-star manual, nothing about me was outstanding. Not my stats. Not my physique. Not my skills. Compared to Kevin, who had a system aiding him all the times, or the other main characters who had every resource they could ask for, I had nothing. I wasn't blessed by the plot armor like the protagonists were. Everything I got was through shedding blood, sweat, and tears. I gained everything that I got by either putting my life on the line to get it or by sacrificing something important. I had to make do with what I had. When facing an opponent like Alex, who had a lot more combat experience than I had, and moreover set a handicap to myself, I had to fight using everything that I had available at my disposal. Thus I chose to fight a mental battle. Since I knew that despite being weaker than me, Alex had more experience than me, I chose to beat him mentally. Everything started with our first clash. Right when I broke his nose using the scabbard of my sword. That's when the mental beatdown started. By winning the very first clash, I had already started setting the tone of the battle. The confidence he had since the beginning of the fight had now diminished, and what replaced it was both shock and anger. It was always pride. Having read many novels with arrogant young masters, I knew that for prideful individuals like him, just a small loss was enough to influence their actions. And I was right. From that point on, his attacks started becoming more predictable and his emotions started to influence his decisions. I then proceeded to block his every attack. With every thrust or stab of his spear, one of my rings would continuously block his every attack. The more he attacked, the more he realized he couldn't do anything. He was helpless. Once again, his confidence took another hit and self-doubt started to set into his mind. Frustration, annoyance, rage, impatience. As those emotions started to set into his mind, with every minute the fight continued, he became sloppier. His weak mentality led to his loss. The opening I created with my rings could have easily been spotted if he had thought about it carefully. With him being someone who had fought many battles before, he should have easily spotted it. However, because of how unstable his mental state was, he ignored that scenario and went for the win. He fell for such an obvious trap and I capitalized on it. Staring at Alex, who was on the ground passed out, beneath my feet, a strange feeling surged from within me. So this is how it feels to win, huh? I wasn't outstanding. I didn't need to be outstanding. I didn't need the plot armor to constantly follow me. I didn't need to take all the cheat items for myself. All I needed to do was polish what I had, and make do with it. UAAAA. Engulfing the entire arena, boisterous cheers from the crowd resounded throughout the whole stadium. Foo. Taking a deep breath, I basked in the moment. I don't dislike this feeling. Entering the stage, the host looked at Alex, who was passed out on the floor for a couple of seconds before looking at the crowd and announcing. And the winner of the duel is Rendover. UAAAA. Once again, cheers resounded across the stadium as everyone started chanting my name. Ren. 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 Under the barrage of cheers, I looked in the distance and saw my parents cheering with the crowd. Even my father, who was usually stoic, was cheering alongside everyone. Despite all odds, after having fought for 46 minutes, Rendover managed to defeat Alex Cloudburn, a renowned ranked prospect brought by our very own Vice Guild Master. As the cameras pointed towards the stands and Martin's face was shown on the big screens of the arena, everyone saw Martin expressionlessly staring at the arena. No one knew his thoughts. He looked completely indifferent to everything. Almost as if what had happened had nothing to do with him. Pointing the cameras back to me, the host continued. Using some unknown technique, Ren created an impenetrable defense that created massive headaches for his opponent Alex. And through. As the host continued speaking and replayed highlights of the match on the big screens, I left the arena and headed back towards the changing room. Just as I set foot outside of the arena, my mother appeared on the pathway to the changing room. Ren. Running in my direction, my mother lunged in my direction and hugged me tightly. Because she was running so fast, the moment she hugged me, it felt as if all the air had been knocked out of me and I took 2 steps back. Oh, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? Releasing me from her hug, my mother patted my body all over to check for any injuries. To be honest, her hug hurt more than whatever Alex did throughout the whole fight. I'm fine. Bitterly smiling, I flexed my arms and reassured her I was fine. That's good. Sighing in relief, my mother looked at me curiously before asking. Ren, when did you get so strong? Listening to her question, my mouth twitched. I couldn't just tell her that this world was based on a novel I created and that I took advantage of my knowledge as the author to take a couple of cheat items. Fortunately, I had already come up with a good excuse beforehand. Mom, did you forget what kind of place I attend? Frowning, my mother fell into deep thought. I know that the Lock is the best academy in the human domain, but you suddenly went from G rank to F rank in less than 3 months. That's not something that can be achieved in such little time. What she said makes sense. It usually took people half to a whole year to increase a rank. Me suddenly jumping a rank in as little as 3 months seems unnatural. Where's Nola? In the end, I could only pretend to be ignorant about her question and shift the topic towards a different topic. She's with you, father, in the stands. Noticing the fact that I was avoiding the question, my mother played along with it. To which I was grateful. Maybe one day I'll come clean and explain to her about what I went through to get as strong as I was now. But it still wasn't the time yet. Especially with everything that was going on with the guild. I wouldn't want them to start worrying. Maybe one day. Ashton City, Northern District, 5 p.m. Inside of a luxurious room, two individuals sat facing each other. Sitting on one of the sofas, Martin with his head held down, recounted the events of today. And that's what happened. After he finished speaking, Martin shut up. He didn't dare utter another word. This wasn't out of choice. It was out of the innate fear he had towards the man that was sitting before him. So Alex failed, huh? Lightly smiling, an old man with light gray hair and light gray goatee tapped on the armrest of his chair. Tap. 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 With every tap of his fingers, Martin felt as if his heart was beating along with it. Cold sweat appeared on his back. Knowing who the man before him was, he wouldn't be surprised if he was suddenly discarded and left for dead somewhere in Ashton City. No, I've already come this far, I can't fail here. Clenching his teeth, Martin lowered his head and tried to apologize. However, before he could do that, glancing in Martin's direction, the old man's deep voice echoed across the room. Don't worry, I'm not mad, it was something that even I didn't expect. Sighing in relief, Martin raised his head and tried to thank the old man. Thank you, Kau. Spurt. However, as soon as Martin raised his head, a dagger pierced him in the right eye. Screaming in agony, Martin covered his eye with his hand as blood dripped on the ground. Kuwa. Shut up. Glaring in Martin's direction, an enormous pressure bore down on him, causing him to shut up immediately. I've already forgiven you, if you continue screaming it won't just end at one eye. Wiping his hand with a white handkerchief, the old man spoke, to which Martin nodded his head in understanding. Thank you for your generosity. Satisfied, the old man sat back on his chair. So, you're saying that the name of the kid who beat Alex was Ren? Hurriedly nodding his head, Martin answered. Yes. Rendover. Repeating the name of the kid who beat Alex a couple of times, the old man thought for a while before turning his attention towards a middle-aged man standing at the entrance of the room. Tim, call Matthew here. As you wish, master. Politely nodding his head, the middle-aged man named Tim quietly left the room. Knock, knock. Soon after, moments after Tim disappeared, someone knocked on the door. Father, did you call me? Slightly opening the door, a youth wearing a grayish-black suit entered the room. He appeared to be in his late teens or so. His face was handsome with a pair of unusually bright eyes that seemed to be able to see through one's heart. The first impression that this youth gave was that he was a refined individual with a bright head on his shoulders. If this youth held a book in his hand, he would likely appear no different from a scholar. Staring at the youth before him with keen interest, a hint of pride appeared in the old man's voice as he asked. Yes, do you by chance know a kid around your age called Rendover? Taken aback by the question, the youth looked at the old man in confusion. Rendover? Yes, that's his name. Smiling widely, Matthew nodded. But of course, we were best friends in middle school. Chapter 82, Kaisa 1. Sunday, Galxicus Guild 80th floor. It was the day after the battle between me and Alex had taken place. I was currently in my father's office. Sitting on a large gray sofa, I took a look at the office. On the opposite side of me, my father, working on a large rosewood desk, was busy compiling a stack of paperwork. As he compiled the paperwork on the table, his pen would drift in swift and fluent movements across the papers on his desk. He looked incredibly efficient. Staring at my father's desk, at eye level, a group of papers, a stack of waiter pads, a portable laptop, and multiple monitors neatly stood on top of the large desk. On the floor, below the desk, lied a PC tower that hummed quietly. On small occasions, blue light would twinkle on top of the PC tower, signaling that its power was on. On the wall to the right, post-it notes appeared on top of a wooden board with several labels and photos marked on it. Although the office wasn't the most organized, the number of papers on his desk just went to show how much work my father was investing every day to keep the guild afloat. Ren. As I was busy looking around, disrupting the silence, my father spoke. Yes? Putting the pen in his hand down, my father's obsidian eyes stared at me. What do you think of our guild? Be honest. Taken aback for a second, I leaned back on the sofa. What did I think of the guild? Honestly, it was bad. From what I've seen yesterday and today, the guild wasn't united. It was split into different factions and there was an evident power struggle. I didn't even know how they managed to keep what was happening within the guild a secret from outsiders. I would bet bronze or silver graded guilds would love to capitalize on this piece of news. I mean, why wouldn't they? Although Galxicus was failing, if the guilds were looking to expand, absorbing Galxicus was the most optimal thing to do. Especially since right now, Galxicus was only a guild in name. It was merely an empty title. It was like a shop that sold nothing. The only reason why it was still standing today was because of my parents' efforts. But that wasn't going to last long. Even they will crumble under all of that work. As my thoughts reached thus far, I couldn't help but be reminded of the fact that my parents were still working on a Sunday. Not once did they rest. If things proceeded to continue like this, I wouldn't give the guild a year before it would be forced to dissolve. Hesitating for a bit, I looked at my father's earnest expression and shared my thoughts. If I had to be honest, terrible. The guild members, instead of being united, are clearly split into factions and... As I recounted my honest thoughts, nodding his head, Ronald sighed. Judging from the way you are speaking, I can already guess you've already figured out how things are going within the guild. Glancing at the piles of paper below him, a trace of sadness appeared in my father's eyes as he murmured. Sadly, the guild is in a state of heavy decline. Stacking the papers on his desk neatly, leaning on his chair, my father looked towards the ceiling. My plan was to one day let you be the guild master of this guild. I wanted to pass this guild on to you so that in the future you would carry it to greater success, but it seems like it was all my wishful thinking. Glancing towards the drawer of his desk, my father took out a silver key from his pocket and inserted it into the drawer. Clank! Unlocking the drawer, my father slid it open. Taking out a thick green book, my father glanced at it for a second. A hint of nostalgia appeared in his eyes. When I saw you fight yesterday, I observed that despite having a great defense, you lacked something important. At first, I thought it was an attacking art, but after I put more thought into it, I figured that this book would be more beneficial to you. Taking one last glance at the book, my father handed it to me. Here. Shocked, I looked at my father. Tough, he looked stoic and indifferent, his eyes carried warmth within them. Whatever he was giving me, it was definitely precious to him, and now he was giving it to me. Thank you. Nodding solemnly, I took the green book. I will never forget his favor. Drifting steps. Movement art that progresses with each step. With every step taken, user speed will increase. Unless user stops, speed will continuously increase until the user either runs out of mana or due to injury. TSSSS. This was precisely what I needed. A movement art. Was this a coincidence? Glancing at my father, he had an all-knowing look. As though knew from the very beginning that I needed this. I guess he wasn't a guild master for nothing. After having only watched me fight once, he could already detect what I was missing. With this movement art, my strength would see another boost. Especially since I was already near breaking through to F+ rank, I could feel that I was only a few days away. As I was busy admiring the book, pointing at the book, my father said. That movement art is one of the guild's top arts, and I'm technically not supposed to be giving it to you. Reason being that it's against the rules, as I would normally need to acquire the permission of the board before being allowed to even show you this, but... Pausing, turning around, my father looked at the window of the office. Towards the busy streets of Ashton City. In a firm voice, he said. But looking at the state of the guild, I don't see the need for me to be reserved. With his back still facing me, my father, Ronald Dover, resolutely looked at the people coming in and out of the building. After a short pause, he turned around and in a solemn voice he said, I want to set up a different branch for our guild. A branch? Taken aback, I tilted my head in confusion. If the guild was failing, why set up a branch? That just didn't make sense. Yes, and you're going to lead it. What? Shocked, I looked at my father with wide eyes. What kind of joke was this? I was still in my first year in the lock. How could I possibly have enough time to run a branch? Asking me to operate a branch would mean that I wouldn't even have time to attend my lectures, let alone classes. Watching the streets below him, Ronald Dover smiled. Ren, in this world, you're either a pawn or a king. You can either be someone who continuously follows others' will or be someone who dictates their own will. Although setting up a branch of a failing guild seems like a stupid idea, in reality, my goal isn't actually to set up a branch. Noticing a subtle hint within his words, a sudden thought occurred to me as I looked at my father in shock. You don't mean... Yes, I want you to set up a mercenary group. A mercenary group. A group composed of talented unaffiliated individuals who do tasks for money. Be it killing certain monsters, villains, or corrupt individuals. They were the ones you would call. Mercenary groups were just as popular as guilds, with some being just as influential as some of the top guilds in the human domain. And my father was asking me to set up a mercenary corp. Placing my hand on my chin, I thought about it. If it's a mercenary group, it was possible. Although hard, it was possible. Setting a mercenary group wasn't easy. There were 2 requirements to set up a mercenary corp. Have at least one individual with a hero certification or get a recommendation from a graded guild. Though I couldn't get a hero certification as I had not yet graduated from the academy, with the recommendation of my father, setting up a mercenary corp wasn't a pipe dream. Creating my own organization. The idea did sound tempting. Creating an organization filled with people that I could control. The more I thought about it, the more I started realizing that this was what I actually needed. After realizing that things did not always go according to plans, rather than remaining passive, why not set up my own organization? An organization that operated in the shadows as my henchmen. If Kevin and the rest were the light, why not be the shadow? Licking my dry lips, I crossed my legs and thought. If I was going to do it, I may as well go big. With my knowledge of the future, I knew certain people who didn't have much time in the novel but were in fact extremely talented in their own right. With my very own organization backing me, I wouldn't need to worry about problems that kept haunting me since the very first day I reincarnated. Yes, why didn't I think about this before? Firming my mind and looking at my father, I said. All right, I'll do it. Nodding his head, and seeing my resolute eyes, a smile appeared on Ronald Dover's face. Good choice. Leaving my father's office, I already started thinking of all the talented people whom I could poach into joining future mercenary corp. I already had a couple of people in mind. Just as I was about to make a list of the people I wanted to join my mercenary group, at that moment, my phone vibrated. Turning on the phone, I checked who was calling me. Soon a smile appeared on my lips. Just the person I was looking for. Small Snake appeared on the caller ID. Hello? As soon as I picked up the phone, Small Snake's face popped up on a hologram screen. Yo, it's been a while. What's up? Where are you? I can hear a lot of people around you. Me? I'm at my parents' guild. I raised my phone and showed him the nearby scenery. Been sorting out the family stuff at the guild. Really? Yup, anyways, I need to talk to you about something. Go ahead. Not on the phone, meet me near my guild in the northern district. That's kind of far. Trust me, you won't regret what I am going to say to you. Seeing me smile mysteriously, Small Snake's expression turned skeptical. In the end, he nodded. All right. Perfect, all right, see you in a bit. Smiling triumphantly, I hung up the phone. This better be W. Tack. Turning off the phone, a trace of a smile appeared on my face. Putting on my coat, I went towards a nearby cafe and sent Small Snake my location. I wonder how big my organization will become. Chapter 83, Kaisa 2. Thank you for coming. Taking a sip of my latte, I glanced towards Small Snake who was sitting on the opposite seat to mine. With his arms and legs crossed, Small Snake looked at me in annoyance. This better be worth it. It took me 30 minutes to get here. I am a busy man. PTTFFF. Covering my mouth, I almost laughed out loud. Stop deluding yourself. Apart from me, there's no one else you currently manage. Speechless, Small Snake's demeanor crumbled as he couldn't find any words to use to refute what I said. It was true. In the latter half of the novel, when Small Snake meets Kevin, he was still unemployed. This meant that apart from me, there was no one else he managed. Although he wasn't lying about taking 30 minutes to arrive here, he wasn't busy at all. He was merely pretending to look busy. With a vein popping from his forehead, Small Snake extended his hand in my direction. Get to the point. Nodding my head, I suddenly turned serious. Locking my fingers together, I rested my chin on them. Staring right into Small Snake's green eyes, I solemnly said. I want to create a mercenary group. Congrats. Thanks, and you're going to be in it. Nodding his head repeatedly, a smile appeared on Small Snake's face. It was the smile of someone that had transcended humanity. So let me get this straight. You made me come all the way here to join your mercenary group that still hasn't been founded nor has any members?
Yeah.
As expected of someone as smart as Small Snake. He instantly understood what I said. Who said I'm the only member? There are others? No, not yet. Small Snake stared at me with a dumbstruck expression. I scratched the back of my head and took a sip of my latte and murmured. They will eventually join.
Huh?
Speechless, Small Snake's sigh lengthened as he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's always like this with him. Always making proposals that didn't make sense and yet still looking so confident. Almost certain that whatever he was planning was going to succeed. Small Snake just didn't understand. Where did that confidence come from? Sigh, I'm sorry but I'll have to refuse. In the end, even though he was slightly tempted, Small Snake refused. More than him not wanting to join. It was more like he couldn't join. In the first place. If it wasn't for his current situation, he would have never worked in the black market in the first place. I mean, why would someone as talented as him work as a low-leveled broker in the black market? It just didn't add up. Do you have anything else to say? Not bothered by Small Snake's refusal, I exaggeratedly sighed and murmured in a tone that Small Snake could hear. Sigh, and here I was doing this for your own good. Shaking his head, finishing his drink, Small Snake prepared to leave. I guess you really just called me to waste time. Leaning on my seat and staring at Small Snake that was preparing to leave, in a voice that only we could hear, I said, "I know you're being hunted by the monolith." "What?" "Plaque." Standing up abruptly, the chair behind Small Snake fell. Pointing at me, his voice shook. How did you know?"
Shh.
Putting my finger on my mouth, I motioned for Small Snake to calm down and sit down. "First, calm down. Look around you, everyone is looking." Glancing towards his surroundings, Small Snake noticed everyone staring at him. Sorry." Apologizing, Small Snake took a deep breath to calm his mind down. He then proceeded to rub his forehead. "All right, I'm better." After a short pause, whilst still standing up, a small frown emerged on his brows. Looking at me, he said, "How did you know?" Taking a look at the half-filled latte in my hand, I twirled the cup. "How did I know?" "Well, let's just say that you're not the only person that can dig into someone else's past." "Well, more or less. As long as I wrote about them, I knew their backstory. Anyhow, if you join me, I can help you with regards to the monolith situation." Frowning, after a short pause, Small Snake couldn't help but once again ask to get confirmation. "When you mentioned the monolith, why you mean the same monolith I'm thinking about?" Smiling mysteriously, I nodded. "Yup, that monolith. The same monolith that you're thinking of and the Union equivalent for villains. TSSSSS. Sitting back down, Small Snake's face became grim. His reaction was understandable. The reason why Small Snake was working in the black market was precisely because of the monolith. A hidden organization that houses the strongest and most powerful villains in the human domain. Also known as the Anti-Union. After having been caught trying to infiltrate the ranks of the monolith, a massive manhunt for Small Snake's head began. Because of how powerful the monolith was, Small Snake could only helplessly lay low inside of the black market. The only organization that could barely protect him. If it weren't for the fact that Small Snake had connections with some of the higher-ups of the black market, he would have long been caught by the monolith. With their aid, he managed to secure himself a job at a brokerage firm where he could lay low. If you choose to trust me like before, I promise you won't regret it. Hesitating for a bit, Small Snake looked at me before saying, how did you find out about my circumstances and the monolith?" Leaning back on my chair, I smiled. "Oh, trust me. There's no one that knows more about the monolith than I do. Well, I was the author of this world after all. Because of how important they become in the second volume of the novel, I had an in-depth understanding of the monolith. Who their members comprised of, where their secret hideout was located, and what plans they were brewing. I knew everything. And of course, I also knew about Small Snake's circumstances. He was after all an important character that appeared in the latter half of the novel. Staying silent for a couple of seconds, Small Snake deeply looked at me. Though I couldn't read his thoughts, I knew that he was currently calculating his options. He could either trust me or carry on with whatever he was doing in the black market. In the end, his decision came down to how much he trusted me. You. After a couple of more seconds. Taking a long and exhausted sigh, Small Snake extended his hand in my direction. "I don't even know why I'm doing this, but, all right, if you keep good on your promise I will join you." I knew you would make the right choice. Extending my hand forward, we both shook hands. The first member of my mercenary group had officially joined. After we shook hands, Small Snake's mood brightened up a bit. Thinking for a bit, looking at me, he asked, "What will the name of the group be?" Without hesitation I responded, "Kaisa." "Kaisa?"
Yeah.
Named after the goddess of chess. Frowning, Small Snake placed his hand under his chin as he couldn't help but be confused. The goddess of chess? Why chess? Smiling, I turned on the holographic function of my phone. Soon a chessboard was projected before us. Pointing towards the chessboard, I said. The mercenary group will consist of 8 main seats, each according to the main chess pieces on this board. Pausing to make sure Small Snake was following, I continued. There will be 1 king, 1 queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, and 2 knights. Any other member will be a pawn. Depending on ability, I will assign them a seat ACC-. Nodding his head, Small Snake cut me in the middle of my sentence. Let me guess, you're the king, right? If so, who are the other members you're thinking of recruiting, and who's going to be the queen? Glancing at Small Snake for a brief moment, I seriously nodded my head. I understand. If you're that adamant about becoming the queen, I don't mind. Nodding his head, Small Snake kept his cool. Sarcasm and teasing barely bothered him now, probably because he suffered way too much shame and humiliation. Letting go of his pride was hard at first, but after realizing that there was no way for him to retaliate, he could only ignore it. Especially since he was now his boss. No, I'm good. TSK, how boring. Clicking my tongue, I continued. You are my first member, and after a bit of thinking I decided that you will be a bishop. Frowning slightly, he couldn't help but ask. Why a bishop? Smiling, I didn't elaborate. Didn't want him to realize what his role was going to be before it was too late. Because I said so. It wasn't really related to chess, but typically bishops were people who were generally entrusted with a position of authority and oversight. Precisely the role that Small Snake will play in our group. Though he was not strong. He had connections and a bright head on his shoulders. With his talents, the mercenary group will be able to expand accordingly without any issues with regards to finding the right connections for supplies, potions, and other things that generally gave headaches to guilds and other mercenary groups. If I had to put this bluntly, he was the group babysitter. After explaining a few more things to Small Snake, glancing at my watch, I checked the time. Plaque. Finishing my drink, I stood up. All right, I guess that's that for now. I had a lot to do. Setting a mercenary group wasn't easy. There were a lot of things I had to get done by the end of the day. Such as come up with a list of people who I wanted to recruit to my group. Find an appropriate location for the group. Register the group name. Only after I completed all of those tasks would I finally be able to actually start recruiting members. Fortunately, I already had an idea of who to recruit, meaning that right now the main priority was finding an appropriate location and officially registering the name of the group so that we could finally be considered a proper mercenary group. Standing up, I bid farewell to Small Snake and headed towards the exit of the cafe. Just right before I separated from Small Snake, I said, "Meet me tomorrow, and I'll give you a list of people I want to recruit." Okay. Nodding his head, Small Snake watched my figure leave the cafe. As he did, he couldn't help but think. Hopefully, I made the right decision. Chapter 84, Kaisa, 3. Mercenary Corp Name, Kaisa. Grade, I, 2, 3, 4, V. Members, 1. Founder, Ren Dover. I stood under the blazing sun and the blue sky, enjoying the clear and warm Ashton City weather. Exiting an enormous building, I glanced at an azure-colored card in my hand. The card was made out of metal, and on its back was a large Roman I engraved on it. This signified the rank of the mercenary group. Since this world likes to rank everything, Mercenary Corps 2 were ranked. They went from 1 to 5, with 5 being the best. Anyhow, ranks aside, because Small Snake had still not officially joined the guild yet, the members' count on the card was 1. Me. When he joins, the card will change accordingly. One of the things that I was a bit hesitant about when creating the corp was whether I should use an alias or my name for the founder section of the card. Ideally, my goal was to make this one of the strongest mercenary groups in the human domain. I wasn't sure if making my name known would be ideal or not, but in the end, I decided to use my name. There was no reason for me to hide my identity. After all, I did create this as an affiliate with Galxicus. Even if I tried to hide it, people would easily be able to deduce who I was. Alright, now that I successfully established the Mercenary Corp, it is time for the next task. Putting the card back into my pocket, I checked my watch. 6:45 p.m. Seeing the time, I moved towards my next location. I had made an appointment to meet with someone for a possible place that I could use for the headquarters for Kaisa. I had checked many places through my phone, but I thought that the one I was currently heading to fit my ideal for the headquarters the best. Welcome. Arriving inside of a large warehouse, a fat middle-aged man wearing a wrinkled black suit came to greet me. Taking out a white handkerchief from his pocket, he wiped the sweat that had accumulated on his forehead. So? Staring at me with anticipation, the fat middle-aged man fiddled with his hands. It was evident from his demeanor that he wanted to get rid of the place at all cost. Glancing at the space, I nodded. The warehouse, although empty, was extremely large. It was located quite a distance away from the main city, and apart from a couple of roads and greenery, there really wasn't anything around it. This was precisely why I liked it. Plain and boring. Perfect place to hide the location of the headquarters. All right, I'll buy it. Checking my account balance, and confirming that I had just about 6 million U in my bank, I decided to directly buy the warehouse with most of the money I had. In total, the warehouse cost me 4,200,000 U. Though expensive, I didn't mind it. That's how much I liked the place. I could have rented a different place, but after a bit of thinking, I opted to buy my own space so that I could do the appropriate modifications. Money wasn't necessarily a problem for me. I could easily make what I lost back with stocks again. With Small Snake helping me, the repercussion of my actions wouldn't come back and bite me, as no one would be able to trace me. In fact, with my knowledge, I could easily make enough money to pay back my parents' guild debt. However, their debt was probably the least of their worries. With the internal strife going on inside of the guild, paying off the debt would do nothing. Moreover, I also wanted to shroud my organization with a veil of mystery. With this place being hidden, it added an element of mystery to those that want to find out more about our organization. I didn't want to create an organization that had a lot of members. I wanted to keep to maximum of 20 elite members. Members that stood out from the rest. Quality over quantity. I wanted to reach a point in the future that whenever one of our members moved, organizations would tremble. Kaisa warehouse. So, how do you like the place? Glancing at Small Snake beside me, I asked for his opinion as I showed him the warehouse I bought. Well, why? Trying to find words to say, Small Snake was speechless. The location of the warehouse was in the middle of nowhere, and the place was empty. It was sad. Very sad. Compared to every other organization Small Snake had been to, even the worst one wasn't as bad as this. Glancing at his employer beside him, Small Snake really couldn't understand what was in his mind. Once again, he couldn't help but start doubting his decision to join him. You don't really need to answer. Was just asking out of politeness. Already bought the place after all. Looking at his reaction and shrugging my shoulders, I took a pile of papers from a folder I had on me and gave them to Small Snake. Here. What's this? Taking the papers, Small Snake frowned. After flipping through them, he couldn't help but tilt his head in confusion. Why them? Don't ask questions, find information about them and send them to me. You won't understand unless you see them in action. Okay. Nodding his head, Small Snake sighed before taking a better look at the lists before him. What I just handed Small Snake was a brief description of a few individuals I wanted him to find information on. The list I had given him contained a lot of names, but I needed to narrow it down. I needed to take their characters into consideration, as well as the likelihood of being able to entice them to join Kaisa. Arrogant or not arrogant? Brave or not brave? Money-driven or not? Everyone was different, and that's why I needed information. Because they were, after all, extras. Although I wrote about them, I didn't know too much about their backstory. If I wanted to recruit them, I needed to be able to familiarize myself with them better so that I could entice them more convincingly.
Ah.
By the way, Small Snake. Remembering something, glancing towards Small Snake, I said. I highlighted 3 names in red, those are the top priority. Make sure you give me details about them. From their past and current situation. I want them all. All right, let me see. Flipping through the page, Small Snake's eyes paused on the names of the 3 individuals I had highlighted. His previous frown deepened. Just what? Though his reaction was understandable, there was a reason why I prioritized them. It wasn't because they were the best, no. It was because they were the easiest to recruit considering what kind of circumstances I was in. Especially since recruiting people into a newly established guild was extremely hard. Don't get me wrong though. Just because they were easier to recruit wasn't the only reason I highlighted their name. They were all extremely talented individuals that would no doubt add value to the members of the guild. Hoo. Opening a copy of the files, I looked at the first highlighted profile. Name, Ava Leafs. Age, 16. Picture, image. Job, student, Lock 976. Potential, unranked. Ava in the novel was a monster tamer. She does make a few appearances in the novel, but in the end, her roles always tended to be small. She'd just appear on one chapter and then just disappear for 20 more to once again appear for one chapter and disappear for another 20. A true extra. I remember that in the last volume of the novel, during the 3rd cataclysm, she was supposed to make another appearance. I had planned for her to appear when the alliance between the 4 races was about to suffer major losses. She with an army of beasts would join the alliance and give them some breathing space and increase their momentum in the fight against demons. She was finally going to show the world how strong her profession was. With an army of beasts, she would decimate and destroy multiple demons at once. Unfortunately, that never happened. Just when I was about to get to that part, I died. One good thing about her was that because she wasn't heavily involved with the plotline, my interfering with her wouldn't cause any trouble to anyone. Plus, with my knowledge as the author, I actually knew about the location of an item she was supposed to get at the end of the novel. It was sort of a cheat item. It essentially allowed for her to control multiple beasts at a time. Since it was meant to be for hers, me getting it and giving it to her wouldn't affect the future events of the story. She'll just be stronger faster than originally meant. Which was ideal. Thinking thus far, I glanced at the next person on the list. Name, Leopold Ray. Age, 32. Picture, image. Job, mercenary at Moonlight Corps. Potential, A, current. An experienced mercenary who appears in the 3rd volume of the book. Although he wasn't necessarily outstanding in combat, he was a very competent leader and commander. The reason why I chose him was because we needed someone with experience to help us. Being new, I knew nothing about how to run a mercenary corp. With him aiding me, developing this organization wasn't a problem. But that wasn't the only reason why I chose him. He had another talent. He was an extremely strong commander. During one of the arcs of the novel, Leopold would take charge of a few troops to fight against villains, and thanks to his heroic deeds he was able to survive and complete the mission flawlessly. He meets Kevin on multiple occasions in the novel, and although Kevin had a good impression of him, he never managed to really enter Kevin's party, which in all honesty would have benefited a lot if they had someone as experienced as him helping them. Sighing, I looked at the last name on the list. Name, Ryan Polive. Age, 12. Picture, image. Job, none. Potential, S, current, unranked. A child prodigy. A child born with a supercomputer of a brain. He could calculate the probability of different factors in a matter of seconds. Whatever scenario was presented before him, he would be able to calculate everything in a matter of seconds, detailing the best route and action to take. He appeared in the 4th volume of the novel, and by the time Kevin found him, he was already dead. He was part of a medium-sized guild that exploited his abilities. They would continuously make him stay at night and work him to the bones. A 12-year-old child. Sadly, he was later killed by his own guild master due to Kevin foiling the plans he had come up with on multiple occasions. In the end, Kevin caught the guild master and killed him on the spot. Must have them. Those were the 3 main people I had set my mind on recruiting. Glancing at Smallzank, who was busy looking at the files I gave him, I smiled. Though he may be doubting me now, as soon as he will see them, he will realize their true potential. I was sure. Chapter 85, Past, Present, and Future 1. 7 a.m. Staring at the clock stuck on the wall of my house, I headed to the kitchen and made myself some coffee. The lights of the villa were shut and I was the only person in the house. My parents already went to the guild and Nola was at daycare. So I had the whole place to myself. Sliding the door that led to the garden, I felt the morning breeze cool down my body instantly. For the past few days, I had been fairly busy. After spending a lot of time remodeling the warehouse as well as studying for my exams, I barely had any time to focus on my training. The only time I had available was usually early in the morning. Foo. Taking a deep breath, I sat crossed-legged in the garden. It was about time I broke through my rank. Taking out multiple potions from my dimensional space, I opened the thumb-sized bottle cap and gulped one of the potions down. Gulp. At first, the potion was tasteless. But soon after, a bitter aftertaste invaded the tonsils of my tongue. The aftertaste was similar to that of a shot of espresso. Very bitter. Pant. Exhaling and taking a long deep breath, I focused my mind on spreading the effects of the potion throughout my body. Instantly, the cells within my body jumped in excitement. Streams of energy circulated around my body as white steam slowly escaped from my body, creating a white mist around me. Gulp. Without skipping a beat, after I felt the effects of the first potion wearing out, I instantly downed another one. Like that, I repeated the process 3 more times until I suddenly felt my body bloat and the muscles of my body twitch. Pant. Pant. Panting heavily, I cleared my mind. Soon after, the twitching stopped and a wave of energy washed over my body, revitalizing all of my muscles. My head became lucid, as well as my senses. Suddenly, everything around me became clearer. The water droplet dripping from the blade of grass in the distance became more perceptible. The sound of the birds chirping became more apparent, and the smells around me intensified. It felt as if everything around me was within my grasp. Foo. Exhaling, and adjusting myself to the changes around me, I looked at my status window. Status. Name, Ren Dover. Rank, F+. Strength, F+. Agility, F+. Stamina, F. Intelligence, F. Mana capacity, F+. Luck, E. Charm, G. Profession. Swordsmanship LVL.2. The degree of understanding of the sword has evolved to the next level. User will find it easier to understand concepts that were previously harder to understand. Martial Manual. Keiki Style, Minor Realm of Mastery. Sword art created by Grandmaster Toshimoto Keiki. A 5-star module that focused primarily on reaching the apex of swordsmanship and speed. Upon mastery, the sword art becomes so fast that before an opponent could even think about their next move, their heads would already be rolling on the ground. Ring of Vindication, Minor Realm of Mastery. Highly advanced sword art that creates a perfect ring of defense around the user. Upon mastery, the ring can create a 3-dimensional sphere that protects the user from all sides. Because of the lack of offensive capabilities, the manual was graded 3 stars. Drifting Steps. Movement art that progresses with each step. With every step taken, user speed will increase. Unless user stops, speed will continuously increase until the user either runs out of mana or due to injury. Skills. G. A Monarch's Indifference. A skill that enables users to erase all emotions and act as a supreme monarch that only calculates the best option regardless of circumstance. I did it. I broke through to the next rank. I was now a small rank away from reaching rank. Judging from the way I was progressing, if nothing strange happened, in either a month or 2 I could finally break through again. Because I had consumed the seed of limit, my training speed was even faster than the likes of Kevin. Still, he had a system, so it's not like it really made a difference for him. Hoo. Standing up, I stretched my body. I could instantly feel the fibers of my muscles being more durable and flexible. Almost as if the power within them had doubled. Kacha. Punching the air, a small shockwave swept the garden. The grass around the area I punched split apart and a gush of air swept the surroundings. Not bad. Nodding in satisfaction, and staring at my fist for a few seconds, I decided to head back into the house. It was about time I practiced the new movement art my dad gave me. The garden was too small for me, therefore, I decided to go to the park. Putting on my shoes, I quickly left the house. Clank. Swoosh. Like a lightning bolt, my figure sped around the park at incredible speeds. Like a shadow, my silhouette ran around the park. As I ran, the world around me became slower and slower, almost as if time had slowed down. However, that didn't last long as I soon ran out of mana. Huff, huff, huff. Stopping and resting my hands on my knees, I felt the morning air rush past me. I was tired. With every step I took, my speed increased. It was almost like I was endlessly accelerating. Drifting Steps. That was the name of the movement art I was practicing. With each step I took, my speed increased. At first, I was running at a regular pace, but as time passed and the longer I ran, the faster I became. It got to the point where I was running so fast that I almost crashed against a couple of trees along the way. This was mainly due to the fact that I couldn't control my body properly as I ran, thus exposing me to danger. Had this not been an open space, I would have definitely gotten injured. Gulp. Downing a stamina recovery potion, followed by a mana recovery potion, I prepared to once again do a lap of the park. However, just as I was about to continue practicing, a warm pleasant voice called out for me. Ren, it's been such a long time.
Frowning,
I looked towards where the voice came from. With his arms crossed and leaning against a tree, a youth wearing a grayish-black suit entered my sight. He appeared to be in his late teens or so. His face was fairly handsome and outstanding. The black suit, which was devoid of any wrinkles, coupled with his demeanor gave off a somewhat dashing aura. His voice was warm, and the way he smiled caused the people around him to have a good feeling around him. Who was he? I don't remember ever knowing this person. Was he another one of the old Ren's acquaintances? Just as I was about to ask him who he was, my mouth abruptly opened. Hello, Matthew. Huh? Lightly smiling, the youth moved away from the tree and headed in my direction. Laughing, he said, You haven't changed since I last saw you. Shy as always. Ba, thump, ba, thump, ba, thump. My heart suddenly sped. Cold sweat appeared on my back, and my body trembled. What was this feeling? Was this fear? Why was I experiencing fear over someone I never met before? What's wrong? The closer he got, the more these feelings intensified. Lowering my head, my mouth once again opened and in a trembling voice. It's nothing, Emathu. What's going on? Who's Matthew? And why couldn't I speak? Millions of questions emerged in my mind as I tried my best to take control of my body. However, it was to no avail. Like a spectator, I could only watch everything unfold before my eyes. I felt powerless. Like a bird trapped inside of a cage with no gap to escape. What is happening to me? Halt. Stopping right in front of Ren, Matthew took a good look at him. Noticing his shoulders trembling, the smile on Matthew's face deepened. I see, I'm glad to see you again, Ren. Me too. In a light tone, almost as if he was addressing something insignificant, Matthew spoke. I've heard you defeated Alex, congrats. I didn't know you had that in you, my friend. You know. When I heard of the news of you defeating Alex, I was quite surprised. I mean, back in middle school no one would have expected for you to even go beyond G rank, let alone reach F rank. You wouldn't believe how surprised I was when I was told you had reached the F rank. Mind blown. As Ren listened to Matthew speaking, his body would shake from time to time. Though he tried to not show any emotions on his face, on rare occasions his face would crumble as emotions such as sadness, rage, helplessness, and despair would appear on it. I am so glad you reached this far after having not seen each other for months. As Matthew finished speaking, scratching his head, Ren meekly said, I just got lucky. Lucky, huh? I guess so. Nodding his head a couple of times, Matthew paused. Staring straight into Ren's eyes, his demeanor completely changed. If before he was like a friendly elder brother, right now he looked like a vicious predator looking at his prey. Ren, as your best friend, I came to give you a piece of advice. Don't do anything unnecessary. Patting him on the shoulder, leaning towards his ear, Matthew whispered, we wouldn't want a similar incident to last time happening now, would we? Nodding his head, Ren's voice shook as he answered. Why, yes. Hearing Ren's confirmation, Matthew laughed out loud. Ahaha, that's great, that's great. I'm glad that we're on the same page. I was worried that you might do something Stu-dash. Ring. Ring. Stopping mid-sentence, the loud ringing coming from his pocket echoed across the surroundings. Frowning, taking out his phone from his pocket and looking at the caller ID, Matthew answered it. Hello, all right, I understand, I'll be there soon. Tack. After a short call, hanging up the phone, sighing, Matthew once again looked at Ren. Fixing his collar, he waved at him and turned around. Seems like I need to go, I guess that's it for our little reunion. Though short, I was extremely happy to have caught up with you. I'll see you next time. Waving towards Matthew, Ren smiled back. Yes, see you soon. Waving his hand till Matthew disappeared, Ren's face soon became indifferent. Arriving at a nearby bench, he sat down. Foo. Taking a deep breath, his vision turned dark and he passed out. Thud. Chapter 86, Past, Present, and Future, 2. Abruptly opening my eyes, I sat up straight. I can control my body again. Touching my face and body, I couldn't help but be elated. I could now feel my hands, face, and every other part of my body. The senses that I had previously lost had returned to me. I no longer felt like a trapped beast. I could finally move. Whew. Just as I was rejoicing at the fact that I could now control my body, I suddenly noticed my surroundings. What's going on? Wasn't I at the park moments before? Looking around me, I found myself outside of what seemed to be a kindergarten. Scanning around, I could see children playing tag in the playground of the kindergarten, followed by their parents coming in and out of the premises to pick them up. Confused, I stood up. I tried to walk around, but 3 steps in, an invisible wall stopped me from moving any further. What? Taken aback by the invisible wall, I frowned. Placing my hand on the invisible wall, I exerted a little bit of strength, but it was to no avail as it didn't budge. Frowning even harder, I placed both hands on the wall and pushed as hard as I could. Still, in the end, no matter how much strength I put in, the wall didn't budge. Turning around, realizing that I could not move the wall, I tried to go in the opposite direction, but it was also to no avail as 3 steps in, another wall blocked me. Taken aback, I tried to move in all directions, but it was futile. Every 3 steps I took, an invisible wall would stop me from moving. No matter how hard I tried to push the walls, they wouldn't budge. I was trapped inside of an invisible cube. What's happening? Where was I? And what is this place? Millions of questions emerged in my mind, as I kept trying to find a way out of the cube. In the end, after 10 minutes of constantly trying, helpless, I could only sit down and stare at the children in the kindergarten playground. Maybe the key to getting free was outside of the cube. As I observed the kindergarten, I couldn't help but focus my attention on a certain area. More specifically, a certain young boy who looked to be around 5 years old. Disheveled, unkempt brown hair and dull eyes. As he swung on the swing of the garden of the kindergarten, the young boy kept staring in the distance, seemingly waiting for someone to pick him up. No matter how long he had to wait. He waited. Yet, despite 30 more minutes passing and most of the children leaving, no one picked him up. As I watched the young boy in the distance, my heart hurt as I couldn't help but wonder. Who is he? That's Matthew. Abruptly turning my head, a youth with blue eyes and jet black hair appeared beside me. Staring in the distance, towards the young boy, a complicated expression appeared on his face. Why you? Smiling in my direction, he introduced himself. Nice to meet you. I'm Ren. My mind blanked. I tried to find words to say, but it was to no avail as I couldn't say anything. What was the old Ren doing here? Wasn't he supposed to be dead? Was he not dead? My mind was in a current state of turmoil as I couldn't find any words to say. Did he even know who I was? Smiling at my reaction, Ren shook his head. There's no need for you to introduce yourself. I've been with you for the past 3 months, watching your every move. What? Shrugging his shoulders, Ren shook his head. Don't ask me, I don't know what happened either. I just suddenly found my consciousness watching everything that you were doing whilst I couldn't control my body. Wait, so you were within me watching everything I did since taking over your body? Smiling, Ren nodded.
Yeah.
My eyes opened wide. To think that someone was watching everything I was doing whilst I reincarnated here. But ho dash.
Shh.
Just as I was about to speak, putting his finger on his mouth, he motioned me to be quiet as he pointed towards the kid I was previously watching. Let's not talk about that now, it's about time you learned about my past. Matthew, are you okay? As soon as the previous Ren stopped talking, out of nowhere, a young boy with jet black hair and blue eyes approached Matthew.
Yeah.
Smiling brightly and nodding his little head, Matthew kept his eyes towards the entrance of the kindergarten. Tapping Matthew on the shoulder, the black-haired boy excitedly said, "Let's play, Matthew. But my parents will come soon." "Yeah, then just play until they come. But they will get mad if they don't see me immediately." Looking around, pointing at the swings, the black-haired boy said, "Then let's just play here on the swings." Watching the two children play on the swings, I couldn't help but turn my head towards Ren's direction and ask, "Is that you?" Staring at the young boy with jet black hair and blue eyes playing with Matthew, Ren lightly nodded. "Yeah." Pointing towards the kid that the old Ren was playing with, I furrowed my brows. "And is that the same guy I met at the park?" Smiling, a trace of sadness appeared in Ren's eyes as he looked at the young Matthew. "Yeah, and he was my best friend." Taken aback, I couldn't help but look at Ren in shock. Remembering what had happened moments before appearing in this strange world, Matthew looked more like a bully rather than a best friend. How was someone like that ever been his friend? Best friend? Noticing the skepticism on my face, Ren smiled but didn't elaborate. "Yeah. Boom." At that moment, as I was still in shock by the revelation, a black sedan entered the parking area of the kindergarten. Staring at the incoming sedan, Matthew happily stood up. Soon the back doors opened and a man and a woman got off of the vehicle. "Mom. Dad. Pa." Just as Matthew was a few feet away from them, raising his hand, the dad slapped him in the face. "I told you not to come running at us like that. You're an elite, you must keep your composure at all times." Holding back his tears, with his hand on his cheek, Matthew smiled weakly and nodded his head. Despite being hit, he seemed rather happy that his parents had shown up. "Here." Taking something out of his pocket, Matthew excitedly handed it to his father. It was a drawing he had made in class that depicted a man and a woman holding hands with a child. However, his father grabbed the picture and crumbled it and tossed it away. "Is this what you wasted your entire day doing? What a waste." Turning around, and urging his wife to follow him, they both entered the car.
Bye.
Seeing his parents enter the car, Matthew secretly picked up the crumpled paper on the floor and entered the car. As he did, turning around, he cheerfully waved at Ren.
Bye.
Ren. The scene cut and the world turned dark. Swoosh. Extending his hand forward, Ren swiped right and the world around me changed. Soon the world around me changed. The kindergarten turned itself into a classroom filled with students. Just as I was about to ask Ren about what was going on, a familiar voice disrupted me. "What happened, Matthew?" Running towards Matthew, Ren's figure appeared. As Ren took a better look at Matthew, he couldn't help but gasp. Matthew's face was bruised and his eyes were black. It looked like he had just been through hell. Moreover, Ren soon noticed Matthew's leg limping as he walked inside of the class. From the way it was swollen, it was evident that his leg was broken. He was not in a good state. Raising his hand up, Ren looked towards the teacher responsible for the class and said, "Teacher, Matthew needs to go to the infirmary immediately." Glancing at Matthew's battered figure for a split second, the class teacher disinterestedly shook his head. He looks fine to me. Opening his eyes wide, Ren's voice couldn't help but raise a few pitches. How does this look fine to you in any way? Frowning, the teacher put the book he was holding down and in an aloof voice said, Student Ren Dover will be given detention after school for talking back to teacher. Wah dash. Grabbing Ren's forearm, coughing a couple of times, Matthew shook his head. Cough, cough, I'm fine. B.U.T. Smiling, Matthew weakly sat on his seat. It's okay, they are too scared to anger my father, cough. Swoosh. Once again, the scene changed. This time, the classroom remained the same, however, everyone was older. Did you hear? Apparently Matthew's mother died in an accident. His life was already miserable before, but look at him now, it's like he doesn't want to live anymore. Staring at the seat in the corner of the class where Matthew sat, every student in class whispered and pointed in his direction. Matthew, are you okay? Approaching Matthew, Ren sat next to him. However, despite trying everything to try to get his attention, Matthew's eyes remained hollow the entire time. His lips were dry, his skin was dry and his hair was a mess. It looked like he had thoroughly given up on life. Matthew? Calling Matthew one last time, Matthew's eyes regained a bit of clarity as he glanced at Ren. Ren. Are you okay? After a short pause, Matthew smiled weakly and said,
Yeah.
I'm fine. Ding. Dong. As the bell that signaled for the end of the school rang, Matthew took his bag and directly left the class. Following Matthew, Ren tried to make sure he wouldn't bump into anyone. He was extremely worried as from the way he was walking, he looked like a zombie. As they reached the entrance of the school, staring at Ren, Matthew waved
Goodbye.
to him and entered a black sedan. As he waved
Goodbye
to Ren, a small tear dropped down from his right cheek. Because it was so subtle, only if one paid close attention would they notice. By Ren. Inside of the invisible cube, watching Matthew entering the car, Ren's face beside me couldn't help but twist as he softly mumbled. I wished I had stopped him that day. Ever since that day, the Matthew I knew died.